welcome. The idea behind what I'm doing is that I'm trying to um, highlight how cancer is something that every country faces around the world, and although that is a reality for so many families across the globe, there are lots of regional societal, cultural differences in how it is treated, in how it is perceived and spoken about. And the more people I speak to, the more voices kind of join in, and the more we can help educate the wider world on how to shift it from a place of pity to somewhere where we can actually educate the wider world on how to show up in a way that's helpful for the cancer community. You know, how they think that we only speak in pity, and we think that the wider world only respond to pity, and that's the only language that we know how to speak in. Whereas by doing something like this and trying to get lots of voices involved, we can help shift that storyline, like that narrative, to something that's actually more helpful and unifying for everybody. Um, but what I want to know is a little bit more about what you both do, um, why you do it, and what kind of difference you're hoping your efforts will make. I want to know a little bit more about the both of you.
Hmm. You go first.
Angel, you want to go first?
No, no, you go first. You go
Okay.
first because yours is the more direct linkage.
Yeah. So I would probably like to thank you, Claire, for bringing us together. I think some of these conversations are quite, thought-provoking, and it actually makes us to sit back and think, because there's so much in action in cancer that we don't get time that much to reflect. So my journey with cancer started even before, when I was a toddler. So the earliest memory was spending time with uncles who were down with cancer in the cancer ward, in stomach cancer. That was the earliest memory I have. So I kind of grew up, visiting my family in hospitals, and I lost eight in the family due to late detection. So it was, and by the time I lost the last two, which was like 5 years back, which was my mom's brother and my dad's brother, and I was probably grown up and in a frame to process, but then we kind of accepted it as a reality that late detection is real, and we go by what the doctors say. But I think the final call came when my dad is now, he's in stage four, so he was also detected. So I would probably say that cancer chose me than me choosing cancer. It was the other way around. I was a very happy banker in London, working for some of the big names. But deep down I knew that I was not that guy, the cold banker doing the deals. I knew I was this kind soul who wanted to help, and like the Superman or the Marvel heroes, you have a superpower, and what do you do with it? And I think with my father, I became a caregiver. And then that was a point when I seriously, stopped, moved out of banking, and got into cancer care. That was my turning point 5 years back. It has been an incredibly, amazing journey, humbling, transforming, and then that is that one moment. I can go into the details, and I'm sure it will be more questions. But I think over to Anjul, because I met Anjul on the way, and that's how we we got on. Yeah.
So my earliest memory is actually from my mother's mother, who had throat cancer. But I was very small. I was like 2, 3 years old. I don't really have that much memory of it. And my relationship with cancer is actually a little bit circuitous in the sense that I don't know. I know people who've had cancer. In fact, my neighbour had it, and she was responding very badly to treatment last year. She's very well now. Um, but my journey to it came through a completely different route, which was actually not cancer related at all, but it was actually through a very serious health scare, which was vascular related, which resulted in sort of some serious hospitalization and so on and so forth, to the extent that the specialists had rung my husband and said she's got half an hour to live. So after that, I felt like I'd had an epiphany and I needed to do something more powerful with my life. So I came across a friend of mine who had a friend who had an 18-year-old daughter who passed away from a stomach cancer. And in response to that, my friend was talking to me about it, and she decided that she would shave her head, donate all her hair for Macmillan, and that got me into it. And then, so it was that side of it, so Little Princess and so on, that was all happening in my life, and I decided that it's fine. I can just grow my hair. I can donate it. It's an important cause. And then about 6 months ago on LinkedIn, through a very circuitous route, actually, I call him my soul sibling. We kind of like adopted brother and sister. I spotted a post and got in touch, and that's how our conversation started. So, from looking at cancer in a very, very specific scenario and specific demographic of children, my focus then widened out to, not just looking in the UK, but also looking abroad and realizing that all of those things that we take for granted in the UK, and all the research that is being done and the money that is available to do this, Cancer, Cancer Research UK, other cancer charities, there's actually a lot of work and a lot of brilliant work that's being done. But when you go to places like India and the work that we've been discussing, it's a very different story. So imagine you have all of the challenges that cancer brings, and on top of that, you have a very serious financial and economic challenge that you can't meet because your social economic system isn't set up in that way. Social care isn't set up in that way. So that kind of brought both of us together. And now we actually look at this from overlapping perspectives, but complementary perspectives. And some of the things that we've been discussing, and which we'll obviously come on to discuss in terms of how Indian society looks at cancer, those attitudes are still prevalent in pockets of UK society within the Indian community.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that with me. Um, what gap do you see in the cancer landscape within India or the Indian community that made you want to step in? So what kind of gaps exist within,
Yeah.
what are the hurdles other than, so what you've mentioned? Are there any others?
So I can simplify this into the three A's of cancer. The first is awareness. There is a stigma. The reality is every family in India has had a cancer issue, either immediately or distant. So everybody knows cancer socially now, and it's not that kind of a social acquaintance you want in your house. So you're very quiet about it. And that conversations are very, very, kind of, they're not loud, they're very silent, they're very painful. And the second is accessibility. Accessibility, India is really big. I was in the UK for a long time. So having traveled length and breadth of India and UK experience the NHS versus what we have here, Here, what happens is there are a few metros. There's two large cities which are there, like Bombay, Bangalore, Delhi. These cities have like they're overcrowded. They've got the best facilities. They've got the best doctors. But if you step outside 50 kilometers from the city, then we call it Bharat, which is basically the ancient India, because that's where the cultural, India starts, and there is nothing there, today, even today. And it's very sad because I was involved in screening 20,000 women over the last 5 years, and we early detected 2,000 plus cancers, and then we were able to kind of treat them, and it's and they're back to their normal life at a fraction of the cost. So if I take my own father's kind of example, he has prostate cancer today, and the tests cost, I would say, maybe £5. That's all it costs to do a test. In NHS, PSA test is actually free, maybe. But people don't have the habit of doing an annual health checkup or anything. They're not even aware what the cancer markers are. So it's again going back to the awareness. And the burden now, I think, is around, the state or the government has already spent £100,000 on him. It's a lot of money, right, to spend. And my father's 88. Is now the question is that the right kind of money to spend? And it's happened in the family. So, access, awareness, and affordability, um, outside the cities, I told you, is Bharat, and tier two, tier three, they don't even have money to even do a test. So there's no money, because it's a huge country with huge population, right? So it needs a lot more. So affordability, accessibility and awareness, the three A's. This is a problem which I think we have on our face right now. It's not that we can statistically treat and cure cancer. We might not even make, but every life saved is important because there's no empathy as well. It's quite on the lower side because it's simply stretched and strained as compared because the volume of the 3.5 million cases right now, active cancer cases, if I want to give you some numbers, and there are 3,000 doctors in India, oncologists.
Wow.
These are some of the stats which are out there, and me and Anjul, we have been hand-holding patients, so it has been transformative for both of us. Just imagine UK and India working together on a single patient. So it's that powerful, and I think people should experience this, and they should talk to somebody with 6 months remaining in their life. They've got a lot of things to teach us, and yeah. So I'm sorry, I just extended and went into a long answer, but
No,
it's what it
not at
is. Yeah.
all. Yeah,
I think
no,
this
please don't
touches,
apologize.
yeah, this touches, Claire, on your point around pity. But I think that the narrative of pity needs to change because with pity comes fear, and I'm glad it's not me. And when you change that narrative just to pure listening and empathy and compassion, and that actually is transformatory both for the patient and a caregiver because there's no strings attached to it. You are there as a sponge that listens and absorbs and sometimes gives them a perspective on what they're going through, and sometimes doesn't talk about what they've been going through in terms of treatment at all. It gives them a space to be outside the treatment because the other thing with cancer is that it becomes your identity. And you may not always want that to be your identity. You may want your identity to be something like, I'm a mother, or I'm a wife, or I'm a hot shot in this field. You may want that to be where you get your comfort from. But cancer is such a thing that it forces itself onto you. I was actually going to use a stronger metaphor, but I think it's actually maybe quite a little too strong. So that whole narrative of empathy and compassion, that is transformative for the recipient, but it's also transformative for the giver. And that's the thing that in this journey that we've both been on together, and there are others within our group, but we have quite a big network of several hundred people, including oncologists, people who just want to support, people who are interested in doing research on this area. That narrative of empathy. So on top of the 3 A's, that we just mentioned, actually there is this softer side which doesn't exist to the degree that we want it to exist. So I'm not a doctor. I couldn't tell you one end of a needle from another. But what I'm able to do, and what people like myself are able to do, is to be able to help the person that's going through this, and to be there as a friend, not cancer to carer, but just as a friend. And I will share your story because he shaved his head after a couple that we were working closely with. She's in her 30s. She has a very serious cancer situation. She had to lose her hair because of the chemo. Her husband did the same. They did that on the weekend. He did it on the Monday for that sense of togetherness. And then mine was already booked for the Saturday. So we take it, when we say we take it very personally, we do take it very personally, but from a view of now, how can we create some action from this? Because empathy on its own and compassion on its own, it only takes you so far. There has to be a practicality. And whereas within the UK, the NHS can take care of quite a lot of that and is incredibly supportive, particularly when it comes to children. You don't have that in India. So very quickly you need to jump from, or you need to maintain the empathy, but also you need to jump to the economics of it, all the tangible, practical. How are we going to get this person better treatment? How are we going to leverage alternative ways of looking at it, and so on?
Wanted to make sure because now every point you said is absolutely valid, both of you. So it's with pity, fear does grow.
Mm,
And when fear exists, no one's going to
mm,
there's going to be that resistance for people to step in. And I think,
mm,
like you said, Rakesh, it's very not obvious, but I can see as I'm talking to people that where you live tends to impact whether you live, So when
mm,
you have that border between one area and the other, where some people can afford to be screened and some people can't, that's going to have an impact on whether, I mean, diagnosis. Diagnosis is the first step towards any kind of treatment. And with no treatment, you don't need to hedge your bets. You know what the outcome's going to be. And that's not the outcome behind every person battling something. It's like your father, Rakesh. Your story about how many people in your family that have been touched by cancer. It's just it in a world where we can hold technology in the palm of our hands, where
mm,
the three of us can meet in different areas of the world, and still we face cancer
mm,
without everybody being able to access like screening and diagnosis and treatment and even moving towards cures. That's what we need, because behind every person battling cancer is a family.
mm.
Um, but what do you think about cancer and the Indian community? What do you think the wider world has no idea about? What does the wider world need to know about when you're battling cancer in the Indian community?
So I think we briefly touched about it. Um, it's just that even the best treatment, if I go, for example, my father is very blessed. he gets the best treatment. Even with the best treatment, there's really no empathy,
Mm.
you know, because it's a factory. There's too many patients coming in. I just go back to that moment when the doctor just told my dad that he's got 3 months to live. Nobody tells that in the UK because we've been on that side as well. And that was shocking to me because this is the best hospital, actually, just telling you this. And I actually saw my father break down and cry. And then I was trying to understand why they did say that to the patient. They should actually tell that to the caregiver. And there's a way to break the news in this counseling, and there's a way to let people know, and that's something which me and Anjul are just trying to give people the feeling. Now, if you ask me, my father is now thankfully still the prostate cancer is very slow growing, so he had a good prognosis, and he's okay. His cancer is kind of arrested, and he has a good quality of life, whereas 3 months versus 5 years now.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And this is in the urban setting. Now, the rural-urban divide is very stark here in India. There is really no healthcare options available for cancer care in the rural setting. Even for doing a test, I remember living in Maidstone in down south and then the village will have an NHS next to it, or we
Mm.
have that. And it's not about, these are some of the challenges in developing nations, Claire. This is my country, very, very proud. I choose to be here, I could, and I try to solve the problem, that, and that's why we're working on something which is a decentralized cancer care network. But the reality is a person do not get diagnosed early
Mm.
because he or she do not have access to testing today,
Mm.
or do not know what test exist. In fact, in India, there's six common types of cancers, mostly women. So it's cervical, breast, oral, these are the three cancers. And for men, it's prostate, then you have colon, and you have lung. So, and oral is common for both, and colon is common for both. So these are six common types of cancers. But by the time somebody comes in, it's already late.
Mm.
So the what we are trying to do is change the narrative from late to early, and that's something which might outlive me, Claire, because it's such a huge country, and it's about the size of maybe 100 UKs, put
Mm.
together, and that would still we still, so in this kind of an environment, but India is catching up. Technology is, helping, and a lot of private, government, and public stakeholders and CSRs they're all trying to solve the problem. So that's the good news, that we are all trying to solve the problem. In fact, UK is involved as well. Most of the research actually happens either in a lab in Cambridge or
Mm.
in Oxford, where we're trying to get breath-based tests, or because I'll give you a simple example for a women, and I've screened 20,000 people, women, and nobody likes to do a cervical screening in India.
They don't
My
like it in the
wife,
UK
yeah,
either. Tell you
yeah,
Yeah.
from
my
experience. Yeah.
you wouldn't like it in the UK either, right? So my wife always gave it a skip in the UK. Whenever she got
Mm.
a call from NHS, she used to not do it. And when we came to our own center and a camp, it was interesting because I told, why don't you do it? We are doing it here. No, there's a cultural hesitation to do it. So and then I had to sit her down. We had a chat and say, we stand up for this. This is what we do. So it's just that, we need one test, Claire,
Mm.
which is just a blood test, which is low cost. And my hopes are on a lab in Cambridge right now who's developing that, and I'm trying to support that. That's where the UK India partnership is very critical because the research actually happens a lot in the UK, and then we are all kind of hand in gloves in centuries. For me, London would be a cleaner Bombay or Delhi. It's like it's culturally, we're all the same platform here. So coming back, so yeah, the urban rural divide, the distance people have to really travel to get a test done, which by the time they come, it's late. So we have done hundreds of camps in rural India, and these are the findings. All these are field level findings which we have found. Like Anjul, I'm not a doctor. You know, I'm a banker who became a kind of a crusader kind of a thing, and now so we focus on early detection because early detection only saves lives. That's the only way to really save lives. Cancers are symptomatic until stage 3, 4. So we have to screen healthy adults. And I know why NHS did that because the cost burden comes down if you catch it early as well. And also the survival is around 90%. So statistically, that's why I believe in it. And I do think these dialogues very powerful and will reach a lot more people and convert that pity into empathy and fear into love, maybe, and
Mm.
support.
Well, yeah, this is partly why I'm doing what I'm doing, because the thing I want to understand it, but I don't, is how cancer is something we all like humans across the globe. It's a part of reality. It shouldn't be, but it is. So we should be, as countries, working closer together to find something that works for everybody. It's not there's one particular type of cancer in India and one particular type of cancer in the UK. It's all cancers everywhere. So,
Yeah.
and you should, I hope you do get that partnership because it's important, because it could save lives, and that at the end of the day is what it's all about. Cancer shouldn't be able to come in and take our loved ones so the one thing that I'm grateful for is that when we were told my son was incurable, we had an oncologist that had the skills and the experience to be able to deliver it in a way where he said, I'm using the word incurable. Notice how I'm not using the word terminal. And I've held on to that for as long as
Yeah.
I'm going to hold on to that for as long as I can. Incurable just means that as it currently stands, there's no medical cure for it. It doesn't mean he's going to disappear tomorrow. I mean, I could disappear tomorrow. Life is that fleeting. Um, but
So,
what does the cancer community in India or the Indian community, so the cancer community within the Indian community, experience that's often not seen or heard by the wider world? Like those untold situations.
It's hidden a lot, I think, within the Indian community. Um, so there have been people who've set up, particularly amongst female populations. You've got instances of women undergoing cancer treatment, not telling anybody in their family because of the stigma, because they would be blamed, because they would be considered inauspicious in the house, and so on and so forth. So you're going through this very treacherous treatment profile and protocols, and you have no way to talk about it. So forget the fact that we're having empathetic conversations. You have nobody to go to. And that's a narrative and that's within the UK. That's a narrative that needs to change, and there are people out there that are working through academia and social policy and so on, who are trying to change that and who are doing awareness work to encourage people to come forward and talk about it and be open about their treatment. It's interesting actually that you were talking about the words between incurable and terminal, and how the bedside manner of oncologists can be really problematic. It can be either very positive or very problematic, and in fact, There are instances of, adult children not sharing with their parents that the parent has a cancer that doesn't have a cure at the moment and they've only got 6 months to live, because they feel that the life expectancy of the parent will further decline. That now they're living, they go to the hospital, they have their treatment, not always literate, so they don't really recognise what's being done. But the fact that they don't know they have cancer actually increases their life expectancy, because they know they've got an illness, they think they're going to be fine, and they continue to live. So again, it comes back to your dad of 3 months versus 5 years. Okay, he knew all about it, but there's that dynamic. And I'm not in a position to judge that. I just think that's a family scenario, a family decision. If you feel you can hang on to your parent longer by not telling them, that is your call. And I wouldn't be the person to say that's right or wrong or unethical. It's a family matter, it's a family decision. And if you get more time to be with that parent and to make sure they enjoy the time they have, I'm not here to judge. So there's lots of complexities going on within it.
I think just to add to what Angel was saying, and having seen it up close in my own family, where I've experienced all of these issues with Anjul has also told, cancer bankrupts people,
Mm,
especially when it's at a late stage. Um, Probably, I would consider myself as one of the top 1% of the Indian society today, because I had an opportunity to study, I had an opportunity to work in some good institutions, maybe have a voice which reaches out a little bit wider than a lot of people, but there is no voice otherwise, for anybody. And when there's no voice, there's no help. You understand, right? And then that is what we're trying to create, a unified voice, which I feel that the caregivers suffer a lot more. And Claire, I understand where you're coming from as well. And it's not easy for a caregiver at all. I think there's physical pain which a patient goes through, but a caregiver's life is changed forever. And it's not just that, and we are very empathetic people. I'm sure the three of us are. We 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 read much more than a lot of people read. We have much more intensity, and we process it, and we just try to convert into something which is much stronger, so that others don't go through. I can just relate to two parents who are there with us. One of them just lost his child due to leukemia, I think AML, right, Anjul? I think
mm,
the
mm,
child.
mm,
And, called me from where he was doing the rites of the child,
mm,
and, not even processed the grief.
mm,
And now part of what we do, and we have a challenge because one, we need to give them the space to heal. And sometimes what they do is trauma response, because they
mm,
don't know what to do. So, and by supporting them and giving them, support is something which we give in many ways, right? It's not just pity, it is like empathy. Sometimes to grown up men, you can't show empathy.
mm,
You have to just be there, give that
mm,
space, give that brotherliness, or like that brotherhood or familyhood. For men, it's very different, right? So, because and that's the Indian men, Indian men. And I'm sure men everywhere in the UK as well. So, it's not easy. So, we've got parents who's lost their children and finding solace in what we do now. And then, because that's one thing, thanks to Anjul, the foundation which we have set up and which is coming up in the UK as well, as to facilitate this partnership between India and UK. Let's cancel the cancer. And I just hope that we're planning to focus a lot on childhood cancers as well. because I think these are the future of the world. I'm not even saying India or the UK. And I think cancer is a problem of the world. And India is just a start, or
Mm,
UK is just a start. We hope we can be of some change in the world globally to caregivers and to patients, to guide them through, to offer some kind of, I think, I think for caregivers, they're very bottled. I'm
mm,
going by my own, experience. I've seen caregivers who the patient passed away 5 years back, and the caregivers are still, they're still mourning, and they're still, they're not come out of it yet. So
mm,
it's a daughter who's attached to his dad, and the dad passed away, and then the daughter just quit the job, and I've never seen the daughter for 5 years, Claire. Just imagine, this is a kind of devastating impact. And in the rural side, they just die. you know there's nothing they can do. If they're diagnosed, they don't have money for tests.
mm,
So, it's where so what we do, we screen in the cities, we screen in the rural, we handhold both, so we don't show any differentiation. So we actually try to give the same experience, be it in the cities or be it in rural areas. I think equity, right? We call it patient equity is a right, fundamental right. So, and changes at a policy level as we go down the line.
So I think picking up the
yeah,
point around childhood cancers, I think it presents bigger challenges. It presents bigger challenges on multiple levels. Partly there are a lot of children in India. Um, there's no easy way to detect and screen. You just can't do it. And so it presents different challenges in terms of awareness. So we think that, there is a problem of fear and facing your mortality with the self-diagnosis. You imagine how much amplified that is with a child diagnosis. So speaking to parents who have gone through this, either recently or a few years back, one of the things that it's really important is to understand what that journey was like, but also, and what I find really really inspiring is that their dedication to make sure that the next person doesn't go through that same bumpy journey, so make it better for the next person. And I think it's a really important thing, and it's a very different contrast from the way that, say, some celebrities handle cancer. And we were speaking about this last week, that some of them in the UK are very good at having a very open conversation about it. So Sir Chris Hoy or Roy Castle Lung Foundation, or even the Royals, quite openly have talked about it and how they can help and support and so on. And others who just shut the door and they just won't be publicly associated with it. And it's such a taboo subject. But in the case of parents who've gone through this, it reminds me of, I went to a talk by Professor Sam Bajetti, who's at Cambridge, and he talked about at one point where some of the work that they were doing and some amazing work that they're doing in the field of genetics and childhood cancers. He said that they had parents whose children had brain tumours and they hadn't made it, and he asked us to pause at that point in this lecture. Um, and he said these parents gave permission for the brain matter of those children that they had lost to be used for research. It's an extremely powerful thing. That motivation to then go and help others, and their resilience, their strength, their courage. Because in helping another parent go through this, it's an emotional roller coaster for that parent, but they want to do it. So that is inspiring. And there's something we can learn. So it's not teapot, teacup of adult cancers trying to help childhood cancers. It's actually much more symbiotic. It's much more of a relationship where both sides can help and understand better.
Yeah. So what I think we've donated some of the, I think it's the tumor. So Jacob's
Mm,
got a really rare form of bone cancer, and I'm pretty sure, so it's just flagged something in my memory. I'm
mm,
like, I am pretty sure that we've donated because the
mm,
entire left leg was taken.
mm.
We told them to keep it,
Yeah.
to do whatever you've got to do to
Mm,
make sure that nobody else goes through this without you
mm,
actually being able to give them an alternative other than surgical removal.
mm,
Yeah, that's it. Surgical
mm,
removal, or the inevitable. Those are Jacob's
mm,
options.
mm,
Take it. Do what you got to do with it. Find a way
mm,
around it because you can't just offer surgery
mm,
because that's our reality. That we've been
mm,
really lucky, and fortunately
mm.
that's not the case. But um sadly it is for I an estimate millions worldwide.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess. I hope it's not
I th
trillions.
I think the other side of cancer in India, and I'm sure you'll pick this up anyway, is that you've got some who are, and some medical profession and policymakers, some who are very much in the I want to help people, I want to cure. And within our group, within Cancer, we've got oncologists who are at the top of their field, who are willing to look at case notes, who are willing to support, talk to patients about their treatment and so on. And they do it all free of charge. They do it out of the goodness of their heart, and they do it because it's important to them to to be in touch with that humanity that they have, not just their clinical skill. But there are also others for whom cancer in India is an enormous money spinner. I mean, it's like, you invest in commodities, you invest in gold, you invest in cancer because it's a captive market, and if you are led down the route, and this is the awareness problem, you don't have the awareness, you are misled down the route of excessive hospital stays. Again, these all cost a lot of money. Excessive treatment. I think you can probably pick this up a bit more, and that's the worrying thing within all of this. There are people who genuinely want to help, and there are people who genuinely see this as the next, hot dollar to make.
Yeah. Yeah. It would I don't the one thing that worries me is that nothing will change until cancer becomes fashionable.
Yeah.
And I don't see anything fashionable about it.
Mm,
Yeah.
That's my struggle. I don't find anything fashionable about the anticipatory grief that I experience on a daily basis. I mean, I used to
mm,
love Christmas and birthdays and Mother's Day, Father's Day, and then it comes with now, you
mm,
always, we joke about the fact that he's had three last Christmases.
mm,
That's the running joke now. How many last Christmases are you going to have? Hundreds, I hope, but it's always there. So like I used to keep birthday cards anyway, but I do it religiously now because I never know
mm,
which one's going to be the last one.
mm,
There's nothing fashionable about that. That's
So,
the
and sorry to interrupt, and in an Indian way, I'm forced to say that, we're going to pray for Jacob, and he's part of us and the family, and you too. I think that's the way we are because we connect. And definitely, I hope next year we get to meet in person also, in person, and hopefully Jacob as well. Would really love to meet him. I just say that you're amazing, Claire, hosting this show and being a caregiver with what you're going through. This is what inspires me personally, to be honest. It humbles me. I don't have cancer. I've been a caregiver, but you're really close. You're a
mm,
mother, so it's very different from me and my old aging dad. It's a lot different. He's at the end of his life, and he is a young child. So always, I think children parents dealing with children with cancer, it's the hardest,
Mm.
So we are with you. Lots of love and vibes, that's
Mm.
all I can say.
Thank you. Um, I always think that we're quite lucky because Jacob's 15. I've had 15 years, I've got 12 years without cancer coming into my awareness. But then when you go to places like the Christie in Manchester, where they do
Mm,
cutting edge radiotherapy, because it is last chance saloon, and you
mm,
see babies,
mm,
I realize how lucky I am. So
mm,
he's currently sitting in the other room.
mm,
He's going through a trial where he's off his medication at the minute, and
mm,
he's been bright and he's been
mm,
funny and he's been the Jacob I remember before this
mm,
started. He's quite witty.
mm,
He's been making fun of me all day. Those are
mm,
the bits.
mm,
It just helps you. I think I would love to give the rest of the world the perspective cancer gives you
mm,
without the cancer.
mm,
Yeah.
I would like the rest of the world to have that
mm.
because not one moment is wasted. Not one. We cooked last weekend and it was just me and him, and it will be a core memory for me.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
we're here talking about the fact that some people don't even get that far because they
Mm,
can't get access to screening, or
mm,
they don't even get the diagnosis, and it's over. Their families haven't even had a chance to put up
mm.
a fight,
Mm. Well,
or
if you're a child in India, the child will, if you're fortunate,
okay.
you go and get, you get looked at, you get treated, But an aggressive cancer will not give the parent that long to go and get that stuff done because the awareness isn't there. You wouldn't think that, my child is losing weight, this is what's happening, these are the symptoms. You wouldn't even twig to go and um, get it checked out, or to even think that that is on the card. But you're right, you had 15 years. In a way, it's just a different way of looking at it. And I think what you're saying is that the the way that you engage with other people, the way that you engage with your life and with the lives of others changes quite dramatically when you are dealing with cancer. It's a little bit like we were again talking about this last week when you have people who have had who are HIV positive or who have had enormous cardiovascular scares or other kinds of issues in their lives or have grown up with and had a very difficult time in their life through carrying disabilities, the way that they look at their lives. I mean, I found in conversations with people who are in that situation incredibly inspiring, incredibly difficult, emotionally quite challenging for me, but incredibly inspiring. And you walk away from it and you just think, and you know what? You have so much to give to the world, and yet society regards you as not not really included, and that's part of the issue I think with cancer is that you become part of a different community that isn't really included in wider society. It's not embraced.
Yeah, because we
And
remind the rest of the world that, we're not immortal
Mm,
and that the human condition is incurable. None of us, that's
mm,
the way I saw it. Once I heard
mm.
Jacob was incurable, I was like, well, technically being human is
So am
terminal. I'm
I.
not getting out of it
Yeah.
alive, you know?
Mm,
So
yes,
that's the way I
I
see it.
think, yeah, Claire, I think it's a very powerful view what you just added on to Anjul's statement and the statement you made before. Creating memories, right?
mm,
And what it has done personally to me is that I am seeing myself as, mortal, totally. And having a normal connection with my daughter and a hug or just sharing a lighter moment like you told, between two normal people is also value, and it's
mm,
becoming a memory. I think
mm,
that's the way cancer shaped us versus probably the rest,
mm,
and coming back to the point you told, maybe we don't feel included, or rather we have been shaped, we have been transformed by this disease, that we see the truth of life a lot more
mm,
clearer than the rest of the people who are still chasing probably a London life, bigger
mm,
cars, bigger paychecks. This is where this is the reality. I think it's very powerful that, you have a lived experience as a caregiver, which I think is far more powerful than me, because we're dealing, though we have a good bond with people like Jacob, like Diksha, who we are taking care in India.
mm,
Um, I I am very attached to her now, personally. I'm
mm,
sure Anjul also is. I can't even think about a day, when, 6 months down the line, and I just keep fervently praying that God does miracles, So,
mm,
and this child, who had her injection today and
mm,
was dozing, heard my voice because her husband was talking to me, and
mm,
just woke up and, in a very Indian cultural way,
mm,
wished me and told, "How are you, brother? Are you
mm,
fine?"
Mm.
And I just realized that we matter more, Claire.
mm,
You, me, and Anjul. I think probably we get people in a very philosophical, if I can bring a bit of spirituality into our discussion here. I find that God loves people, puts them through suffering. Those who love the most, those God
mm,
loves the most gets a worse. Now, this is a uniting philosophy. There's the UK, India here. I think I've seen people who suffer. They have the most beautiful hearts.
mm,
As such. So it's just a different space, different world. Very difficult for me to integrate along with the normal person. There's a
mm,
big divide which is there. I go for meetings in with these banks and other institutions, Claire, just trying to get support for what we do, and they never will get you, because unless they are a survivor themselves, or
mm.
and then, so yeah, I think I definitely feel what you say. I think Anjul also, we all feel it. But how do we make a noise as an institution, or how do we kind of, get that's the kind of things that, yeah.
That's it. So it's the things that I kind of stand for are truth,
Mm,
unity, and lived experience leadership.
mm,
Someone somewhere from each country needs to have the torch. And we
mm,
all need to almost like the Olympics, but for cancer, where we all
mm,
one place where we all unite and we go, do you know
mm.
what? The world can't, the louder we get, the world can't ignore it forever.
Yeah.
Cancer is never going to trend. Cancer is never going to not be taboo. But I
Mm,
think that is costing people lives. It's
mm,
costing people loved ones, It's just from your perspective, from the perspective of the Indian community, what does real support look like? I know what it looks like for me because I bang
mm.
on about it on social media all the time, but what does it mean from your perspective?
Again, my perspective, and Anjul can add to that because we both are
Mm,
dealing with Indian patients.
mm,
I've realized, just being a caregiver to my own father, that and with these people, is that they love to be treated normally,
mm,
and just treat them normally, and don't give them extra, or just treat them as they were before.
mm,
And that I have seen has the best impact, when you still are enjoying the time with them, when you know they're going to go, and but you just treat them normally as such, and I think that creates a very healthy environment, actually. When you're not bringing your emotions into the forefront of, and then you're showing anxiety because they're very vulnerable. The chemos in them are kind of there's a war going inside anyways. Everything is the system is pretty much at war. And if you take a blood test, the WBC count is out of the roof. The infections, the fevers, there's so much of stuff happening. All they want is that. That's my lived experience, Claire. I think that's what I try to do as well. I don't, I just try to treat them normally, and I don't really bring the cancer, glasses on.
I think to add to that, I think there's I think I'm going to go very practical, because I think that there is the whole um, getting the treatment. There is first finding it, getting the treatment, getting them through. One of the things that we haven't touched upon is actually navigating the Indian medical systems when you have a cancer diagnosis. It's incredibly challenging. And that's what the team have been doing in India and helping people through that with volunteers and so on. So that's in itself a challenge. But I think coming back to this country, I am reminded of a conversation I had with somebody a couple of weeks ago, very lovely lady. And when I spoke to her and said, I'm going to donate my hair for Little Princess, she said, well, you could wear a wig afterwards. And I said, but no, Auntie, I said, I want people to see this, because I want people to understand that not having hair is not completely abnormal. It's a little bit odd for women, but it's not abnormal. And it just struck me that actually having been through that journey, that whole thing around the impact of chemo and what it does for you is something it's very difficult for people to get their head around. And what I've seen is that it's it points in your face. This is what you will look like. This is what you will be. This is what you see in the morning every day. And I will be honest with you. Sometimes I look in the mirror, and if it wasn't for the support of my husband and my son, particularly my husband, I wouldn't have done this,
Mm.
because I would have just thought, you know what? And I do look in the mirror and I think, I did do this. I've got to wait till it grows back, right? It is a massive shock to the system. But you imagine if you're a child and you've got to go through that, and you've got treatment, and it's horrific. And I don't say that word lightly, it is truly horrific what you go through, and the reactions of other people around you. And then at the end of the day, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. It's a lottery at the end of the day. And that's within this country where we have excellent treatment. I mean, one of the things that I would say is we complain a lot about the NHS, but when it comes to children, and I have a son, who's normal, perfectly, healthy, but when it comes to children, the NHS, they drop everything and they are on it. So the care that children would get in this country is second to none. But that doesn't get away from the fact that if you have a particular diagnosis, it is going to be extremely challenging for you. And people don't want to go there. They really, really don't want to go there. So I think what you're doing in terms of creating this global conversation around it does mean that somewhere some connection will happen that will make something click into place that will help Jacob, or will help a child in Mexico, or will help a child in Uganda or somewhere else. This kind of exchange of dialogue, because at the moment we're all sitting in our own little padded cell, and we're all basically banging against the doors. And what you've come and done is you actually opened a door, and we can actually walk into each other's rooms.
I don't see why we can't. That's
Yeah,
the thing, because that's the only way we're going to, I think that's the only way we're going to find a way to beat it together.
yeah.
And the one thing that I think I struggled with the most was the silence.
Mm,
I think how I know it makes you face your own, mortality. I know that because it made me face mine.
mm,
I that's okay though.
mm,
Knowing
mm,
that you're human and knowing that you don't
mm,
have an inexhaustible amount of time, I
mm,
think it's helped me become a better person.
mm,
I'm now a runner. I
mm,
now, I do, I go to the gym. I, follow and I live a life I never would have imagined I'd live
mm,
had this not have happened to us.
mm,
Um, but just because I've done it doesn't mean everybody else
mm,
can do it. And it's just time for that global conversation to open up.
mm,
Because once we show that we're talking about it together,
mm, mm.
then we can help the wider world understand how to talk to us.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
that's the next global conversation.
Mm,
So it's just trying to understand the challenges from different cultures and countries and backgrounds and what kind
mm,
of things that they face
mm,
so that we can actually go, oh, well, actually, we do it like this.
mm,
And then, oh, but we've got this problem. Oh, well, we do it like that.
mm.
And just that's the only way we're going to do it, I think. I don't know about you, but
And I think
yeah,
Claire, you coming from your perspective is very powerful. Yeah, because I think Anjul, rather than just being a podcast,
Mm,
I definitely see the opportunity to expand this conversation beyond India and UK to people with lived experiences, and
mm,
how can we kind of
I I am working on something with
mm,
somebody else. So the idea is this is kind of my baby. This platform that I've built. It's off the back of my experience as Jacob's mother and how the NHS is brilliant for him, brilliant.
mm,
But as a parent, I've been left adrift.
mm,
And I don't know, I haven't known what to do. I refuse to let anybody else feel like that. And so I've created
mm,
something, and that's why I've written a book and there's a lighthouse on the front,
mm,
um, to guide people in,
mm,
because that's what I needed that I didn't
mm,
get. But um, an associate of mine and I are working towards a project where it expands upon this in forms of like awards,
mm,
so it's like a worldwide digital
mm,
award ceremony that runs
mm,
for the cancer community, by the cancer community,
mm,
um, to recognize not the big corporate companies, but the little platforms that keep it
mm,
going.
mm, mm.
Um, so that's part of what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and I would, you know, welcome anybody to be a
Mm,
part of it, where it's only in the early stages. Um,
mm,
but that's the next step. The
mm,
first step, I think, is kind of opening up this conversation worldwide
mm,
and then branching onto that. The next step with the awards that we do yearly. So there are things, but I would be open to suggestions
mm, mm,
as to how to make some sort of difference, because you know what do you wish that governments and policy leaders and medical leaders, what do you wish they would be able to see and they would be able to change? Because it's, not about what I'm building, it's about how we actually change the conversation and we change people's lives so that this isn't a reality for everyone.
I think policymakers, and actually, as you were speaking, there's a couple of things came into my head. Well, policymakers, they see in terms of, it will be great if you have a policymaker who sees in terms of empathy, but that's probably not going to last that long. So it's really about, what's the economic impact of losing people through this, the cost of treatment, all of the other things that matter to policymakers because they like a nice oil system and actually how does this disrupt, when it is very disruptive, how does that disrupt that system? So there's that side to it. But as you were talking, I thought you were going to say the equivalent of Macmillan nurses, but aimed at parents and children. So Macmillan nurses basically are um, they are very, very highly regarded in helping adults go through the cancer journey, and particularly as they're getting towards the end of it. That I was wondering whether you were thinking of something along those lines, and a little bit along the lines of what we're doing in India. I mean, I sit in London, the couple is in Delhi, but we speak, and with technology, that's very, very, that's very, very achievable. And actually, I would have no problem, with if it was somebody in the UK, I would have no problem traveling to see them, frequently as well. But I was wondering whether you were thinking along those lines to help open up that narrative and be that level of support, almost in the parallel way to what Macmillan nurses do. I think policymakers, they have their own thing, but within all of this, there is a very important. It is the way of the world. There is a very important role for companies to play in terms of helping create awareness, helping create funding, helping to create a social fabric that makes it okay. So,
Anjul, I think just to add, I think that is the most important point,
mm,
the social fabric. And I think
mm,
the problem is very, very social.
mm,
I think policymakers comes later, but
mm,
how we have gone through this journey
mm,
and we now feel very different about
mm,
us
mm,
versus others. So,
mm,
and there's that awkward silence again in
mm,
that social fabric. So, I
mm,
think the most powerful thing is to break that silence and um, get people to kind of the cultural behavioral shift, if I may use the term. I
mm,
think that's something which I think definitely, yes, policymakers down the line, yes, I'm
mm,
sure it will, but I think going through organizations is quite powerful because it's quite
mm,
structured and those voices matter. But
mm,
organizations are are people end of the day, and it's again
mm,
people. So somewhere the normal people should start kind of
mm,
opening up to what we go through and how they can be part of they accept and acknowledge and they roll up the sleeves as well. I think
mm,
that's quite important.
mm,
That's I think that's something which I really felt. My journey has been 5 years, and I'm sure Anjul and Claire, I'm not sure how many years this has been going on in for you with Jacob. How long has your
He's been diagnosed and treated for 3 years.
mm,
okay.
But we're so he was on medication that actually was working to stop the tumors in his lungs from stopping. So it started in
mm,
the pelvis. His leg had to be amputated, and then the tumors spread to his lungs. But his oncologist is amazing. His
mm,
oncologist is incredible. And I
mm,
think, that sometimes is all it takes for someone with
mm.
some kind of medical experience to make you feel like they've got your
Yeah.
back.
Mm,
Back. Yeah.
He has never failed us. Like
mm,
I know one day that our luck will run out, but I'm not going to
mm,
hold it against him. He's not Superman. Um,
mm,
but in terms of what you were saying about change, like the social fabric, if there is anybody, like you said, that there are some people that do within the Indian community want to get the word out,
mm,
send them in my direction and I'll put them on here.
mm,
Set them
mm,
up, and it doesn't matter day or night, I'll stay up and
mm,
I'll do it. Like we need
mm,
to join forces, we need to
mm,
start opening those doors up.
mm,
We
Yes.
need to start like opening that conversation up between each other.
mm,
Yes.
Um,
So
Go
So
on.
what started as a podcast has become a unified kind of a
Yeah,
force, right?
the
I sense
scales are
the shift,
tipping, and they're
the
tipping
shifting
quite
scale.
fast now. What wider truth do you think the world needs to hear? I think we've got about 2 minutes left. So
Mm.
if you could summarize if you could say anything to the wider world or the cancer community in India, what would you say? What would your message be?
I think mine would be face them, face it. Two
Talk
words
about it.
Yeah,
limited.
I think we need to face it.
Mm.
It's an elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Mm.
Why are we not talking about it? Why are we not solving for it? It's worse than COVID in India right now,
Mm.
but it's still not talked about. It's an
Mm.
epidemic in India. So
Mm.
the government has not declared on it. The people are shying away from talking about it. I think it needs to face it. We need to face it together, and we need to kind of everybody needs to come together.
Mm.
It's not like it's a social problem. Most importantly, and then I can quickly tell you, like in the rural-urban divide, the rural side, cervical cancer is something which can be prevented. It comes from early marriages, poor menstrual hygiene,
Mm.
kind of partners who are not faithful, etc., etc., and finally gets into full-blown cervical cancer.
Mm.
So a lot of it is social by nature. I still don't understand why countries allow people to smoke and then spend a million times more on healthcare.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
understand? And there's a lot of, tobacco-based,
Mm.
deaths. So that's about it. I think policy, but I think we need to face it.
Mm. Well, thank you both very much for your time today. I know it's gone really, really fast.
It has gone so
It
fast.
has gone really fast. It has been a pleasure talking to you. And I hope to talk to you again in the future.
Thank you
I
It's
so
really
an
do.
much. It's
So
been
let's join
wonderful.
forces. Let's join
yes.
forces. That's the only way we're going to open this conversation up. But it has
Yes,
been a
it's an
pleasure.
honor to meet you. It's an honor to meet you, Claire, with my sister Anjul. Yeah.
The honor is all mine, Rakesh. It's been a pleasure talking to you.